The Dark Knights of Steel is a different take on the DC Universe. Imagine the DC Universe if it was set in the universe of Game of Thrones. It's a medieval fantasy magical adventure with all of your favorite DC heroes. And this is the full story channel, where we basically take all of our comic books from our main channel, Comicstorian, and we combine them into a giant video for you to enjoy over here and on Spotify. Let's get into Dark Knights of Steel issues 1 through 12. Most prophecies can be blissfully ignored. But sometimes events are foretold which hold too much truth, and ignoring these divinations would not just be foolhardy, but it could spell disaster. When Krypton met its inevitable doom, a lone ship escaped, crash landing on the Earth. Inside of it was more than a baby. It was the soon-to-be parents, Jor-El and Laura. But hardly even stepping foot out of their escape pod, Jor-El heard horses and turned back to see knights pointing their arrows at him. He yelled that they are not a threat. His wife is having a child. The knights, they fired. Jor-El screamed and everything turned red as Jor-El's eyes burned hotter than 1,000 suns. And as the young Kal-El was born, Laura panted, asking what happened. Even though there was devastation all around them, Jor-El tells her, "It's all right. Everything is going to be okay." We now jump 19 years into the future to the Castle of El. Kal-El called to Bruce, telling him that he'd like to come with. Bruce fastened his cloak, telling the young prince no, and Kal-El tells him why not. He relies on children, but not a friend. Bruce puts on his helmet, telling him, "You're practically a god." Kal-El protests, but Alfred laughs. He can shoot fire from his eyes. Bruce then says that he swore to protect the El family from the one thing that can harm them, and he will confront the Banshee's magic, and he will not lead the prince into danger. Kal-El asks him, "What of you? Are you not immune to magic?" Bruce stares for a moment and then leaves. "Please stay here." Once alone, Alfred tells him that the silent glare is what he means when he's losing an argument. Later in Fest Town, Bruce gets his report from all of his Robins, all telling him that the area is now secure, just evacuating the last to the inn. Bruce walks up to see Jason dragging a man behind him, and when Jason looks back, he says, "I tried to reason with him." As the Robins all clear out, Bruce walks in with his sword drawn, holding it over the Banshee. He asks if she knows who he is, and she tells him, "Yes, you're that bastard Bat Prince." Bruce tells her, "Good, then you know what will happen if you attempt to flee. Are you here as an assassin sent by King Jefferson?" The woman says that she has no wish to harm the elves, no matter how much they wish her harm. Bruce tells her that magic and her kind are outlawed in the kingdom, and that she has violated the law by simply even being here, and she will be imprisoned. She will not be mistreated if she comes peacefully. The woman says that her name is Dinah, and as for quietly, she releases a sonic shout ripping apart the building. Bruce begins to slowly get back up, with Dinah asking how is he still alive. "Why are you not torn to pieces?" But Bruce bleeds. I don't know. She screams again, much closer this time, but before she could do any real damage, there's a gust of air and Kal-El holds her mouth closed. "Shh, you don't look like a monster, you just look scared." She begins to tremble, and then suddenly she's knocked out, with Kal-El looking at Bruce. Was that really necessary? Later at the Castle of El's throne room, Jor-El asks why did he take the son of the king with him. Bruce apologizes, "An error in judgment on my part." And Kal-El tells him, "Do not lie. I went on my own accord, father." Bruce then says that his Robins are stationed in Jefferson's court, and they've learned that the magical assassin had been sent. But Kal-El says that they can't be sure that that woman was the assassin. Jor-El scowls that they are the last of their race, and he will do whatever he deems necessary to preserve and protect the House of El. Bruce kneels before them, "And I will continue to protect you." But Laura lifts him. "You will not kneel here. Your parents were monarchs and our friends." Jor-El stands up. "If I had my way, you would be sitting here with us, Bruce." "Everyone sees you as gods. I'm just a bastard." Kal-El steps forward. "So, who cares? The entire kingdom does! The kingdom that I serve!" The two go back and forth, and Jor-El stops them, telling Bruce that he would like a word. They step outside, and he asks him what is wrong. He seems more agitated. Bruce tells him that he is afraid. Today he stood in the path of destruction and he should have been killed, yet he lives. This is not the first time that this has happened. He was sworn to protect them from magic, but the Green Man, when he attacked, there are things that he can do, and he has come to suspect that there is dark magic within him and he should be locked away. Jor-El goes on stating that he is not cursed. "You knew you were a bastard, and that was never hidden from you or the kingdom. Your mother and I was a mistake, but you were not a mistake, and what happened with Martha, that was the mistake. You are my son, Bruce. That is why I strongly believe you should be sitting at the throne. 2 kings have loved you. But at that moment, a magical green arrow finds its mark in Jor-El's eye, and he falls over. Lightning strikes at this revelation that Jor-El is actually Bruce's father as he picks up the lifeless body of his now discovered father. And his eyes begin to glow red. The rain begins to pour all around him, and the rage in his eyes burn hotter and hotter with a flash of red seen by all. Jor-El, the man that he learned was actually his father, was slain by a magically enhanced green arrow. Laura and Kal-El hurry to the roof after hearing the bellowing cry, but Bruce didn't stay to mourn. With Alfred ready with the horses, he raced to the Hob forest where the arrow came from. Alfred asked how could the arrow have flown that far, and Bruce told him the only way that it could have was the Green Man. Another arrow is fired, but letting his abilities take hold, Bruce snatches the arrow aimed for Alfred and crushes it mid-flight. The archer Oliver Queen lowers his bow, asking, "How is that possible?" But Bruce didn't answer him with words. It was with a swing of his sword and the removal of a hand that was sufficient enough to get his point across. It was Bruce who had the next question. "Where is he?" he demanded. And as the assassin refused to answer, Bruce rose his sword again in anger. But Alfred stopped him. Bruce looked down. "It's all right. I'm not a murderer. I can't get answers from a dead man." So the next morning in the Kingdom of Storms, the prophet Constantine sits above looking over the city when a green figure tells him that it is done. Constantine asks what of Oliver, but the green man tells him that the ring told him to go without. Constantine laughs. "Is that so? Well, you can't argue with jewelry." A short while later, within the castle grounds, King Jefferson watches over his children as they all train themselves in magical ways. Anissa practices her power to move earth, and Jennifer lightning. Jacob calls forth the rain, to which Constantine is not happy that his pipe has now been extinguished. After pulling Jefferson aside, Constantine tells him that it is done. Jor-El is dead. Though they do this to protect the realm, the only thing that he can promise at this point is that the elves are pissed. Which, back with the elves, General Waller is all ready to lead them into war. The jester Harley Quinn suggests that perhaps they should consult Bruce, but that only angered Kal-El more. He shouted, "This is a family matter, and Bruce is not one of us. But before we go enacting war, I want proof first. I want to speak with their assassin." Meanwhile, across the sea at the Amazonian island, word of what happened has reached their shores, and Lois informs Queen Hippolyta. But it wasn't the queen that she needed to speak with, it was the princess. As Diana trained out in the field, she welcomes Lois. And still, Lois's message is not even for her. It was for Zala, daughter of Jor-El. Diana knew that Zala would leave, and with a kiss, Zala left in tears. Diana picked up Zala's sword, asking Lois if it was King Pierce's doing. And Lois says that she hasn't confirmed it, but he is the obvious suspect. Back with Kal-El, he meets with the archer in the dungeon looking for answers, telling Oliver that he could simply kill him with a glance. Oliver says that he is well aware. It is one of the reasons why he and his kind had to be removed. They are monsters and they have convinced themselves of a lie. Now hurry up and kill him. Let's get this over with. But Kal-El stops himself. No, I won't. No matter what you think, the elves are not killers. So later that night, King Jefferson sleeps when there is a sudden tomb from within his walls. He goes first to check in Anissa, thinking that it may have come from her room, but he realizes that this was an attack. He rushes over to Jacob's room to see Zala there holding Jacob by the shirt, floating in the air, and he yells for her to put him down. Zala flies up into the air, telling him, "That was the idea, human." Once high enough, Jacob says that he isn't scared. He could make it rain in her lungs right now, but Zala tells him, "No, you won't," and she drops him. As he falls to his death, Jefferson lashes out with his magic, the one thing to stop the elves, but Zala brushes the attack off, smiling. That tickled. And with nothing more for Jefferson to do, Zala turns and flies off, leaving him a broken man with a dead son. Amidst the recent attack on King Jor-El, word from across the land came that there was a strange star that came crashing to the earth in the lands of Magnus. Bruce's Robin sent for him to investigate the strange occurrence, but when Bruce presented the idea of leaving the castle, General Waller advised against it. Their king was slain. They must fortify themselves, and Bruce recites, "Come from the stars." He's not sure it's the best idea to ignore how the prophecy begins, and Cal dismisses the thought, stating that it's just superstition. He came from a planet that didn't have prophecies. Jester Quinn quietly says that the planet that he came from also got blew up. Maybe not the best example. Queen Laura tells Bruce that he will go and learn what this is and return as quickly as they can. They will wait to bury the king until their daughter is back with them, and he has returned. But while Bruce is setting out over in Amazonia, Lois informs Queen Hippolyta and General Philippus that she has received word that King Jefferson is on his way. When asked why, Laura explains that his son, Jacob, was murdered, though her sources are unable to determine who the attacker was. Philippus asks does she have a suspect, and Lois says that she'd suggest some kind of reprisal for Jor-El's assassination. But striking at the boy makes no sense. Within a few moments, a royal ship docks on the Amazon island. And the moment that King Jefferson sets foot on the sand, both Princess Diana and Philippus draw their blades, telling him to wait. As the king's guards raise their spears, Constantine smiles. Whoa, 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 whoa. Let's not have an international incident over a foot. Hippolyta tells Jefferson that he knows the rule of their land and he cannot step upon it. Jefferson pulls back, telling her, of course, if he can make a suggestion, perhaps they should chat on the ship. After a bit of back and forth over whether or not they can trust them, Hippolyta does go on the ship. And as they're all seated, Jefferson says that Jacob was gifted. He could summon the rain in ways that had not been seen for generations. Hippolyta tells him that she is sorry, but to the point. Did he have Jor-El killed? Jefferson says that he did. He couldn't ignore the threat that the Elves posed any longer. He had to act to save the world, and he knows that he was right to do so, having seen their power alongside their evil. Hippolyta asks whose power, and Jefferson clenches his teeth, stating that their daughter, Zala Jor-El, murdered Jacob. They begin to defend their former sister-in-arms, but it is explained that she struck at night and dropped Jacob from the sky, and she smiled as she murdered him. They know the prophecy, they know the threat that the Elves pose, and yet Amazonia will allow their daughter to consort with, but Hippolyta stops Jefferson, stating that he will not come to their shores and lecture her, and he will not involve Diana. They go back and forth a little bit more about the prophecy, stating that they know of it, and that the future being written down is dangerous. But Jefferson comes to the point, asking if she will stand with him. It's Diana that tells her mother not to do it, telling her that this is not a war that involves them, and so the king sets sail. As they are sailing out into the ocean, though, they run into Zala Jor-El, the daughter of Jor-El. Jefferson informs her that he wasn't prepared for her last time, but he is ready now, and his lightning cuts through the air with a booming crack-a-boom, which strikes Zala, sending her into the ocean. Constantine calls out, asking if he saw where she landed, but at that moment she flies up from under the ship, tearing it to pieces. Jefferson calls out to everyone to get to the lifeboats, but that's when there's a low schnick. Jefferson looks down to see a giant piece of wood shoved through his back and out his chest, and Zala tells him, "No more kings." She flies off, leaving the crew to fend for themselves. A king has passed, and a new queen will rule the land, Anissa. Later, over at the lands of Magnus, Bruce and Alfred ride through, seeing the aftermath of a battle, and Bruce says that he knows these people. They must be on guard. Whatever did this could still be here. Alfred gets down, telling him no, he doesn't think so. Whoever and whatever landed here is gone. In the earth, a green rock is protruding, and as Bruce leans in asking what is it, he feels himself getting weaker. Alfred throws the rock, and Bruce asks if it did not affect him. Perhaps it's because... But Alfred takes Bruce's hand. It's all right. I know. I know all of it, and it's time that you learned the truth. With Bruce's reaction to the strange green stone, Alfred places it in a small box for safekeeping, asking how he's feeling. Bruce says that he feels like he was beaten by a green rock. He spent so long stopping people with powers, but I'm just as bad as all of those freaks in the dungeon. Alfred closes the box, telling him that they are not all freaks, and neither is he. Not everything is so malevolent. Bruce tells him, I don't know who I am anymore. And Alfred informs him, you are Bruce Wayne, son of a king and queen, son of Thomas and Martha. Bruce sighs. No, I'm not. I don't understand how King Thomas could just pretend. Alfred looks off, telling him he was watching the skies that day. He saw the L-ship burn across the heavens, and he heard the thunder that announced their arrival on this world. A new family on a strange new world, and if they were anyone else, they wouldn't have survived, but they thrived with their newfound powers. They built a home hidden away and watched the humans from afar, listening to the nearby kingdom at night, learning their customs and their language. Jor-El and Laura found happiness here, two survivors of a lost planet and a child born of this one. But one night came a rumble. The two tracked the tremors, feeling the earth, following the ripples in the earth with enhanced eyes until they found the source, Mount Kristoff. The volcano will erupt within 2 days, and Jor-El knew that they would have to rebuild again, but Laura was more worried about the nearby kingdom. They could rebuild, but the humans could not. Jor-El's concern was that if they make themselves known, then the world will know of them and their powers. But Laura suggested another way. The two scientists drafted plans, and they demonstrated how the Wayne's army could work to stave off the disaster if they started that day. So later, Jor-El, hiding his identity, provided those plans to the Wayne's advisor, warning him of the eruption and the method to counter it. But their advisor, Alexander Luthor, was stubborn and prideful and had his own beliefs, destroying the plans without informing the king and the queen. The next day, Jor-El entered the kingdom asking why hasn't anyone evacuated. The mountain is about to explode, and Thomas asked Alexander if it's true. Alexander said that he had reviewed the ancient records and the mountain has always been angry and never threatened them before. It was at that moment that the mountain erupted. Laura handed young Kal-El to Jor-El and walked through the guards' weapons, stating that they must act. Seeing the metal swords and spears break upon piercing the woman's skin, Thomas asked, "What are they?" And Laura smiled, stating, "Friends." But after leaving their son with the Waynes, Jor-El and Laura took off to the skies and protected the kingdom from its impending doom, revealing to the world their powers and abilities. And, well, the elves were loved by all except one. Luthor's name and title were taken from him, and he was banished from the kingdom. He was never seen again. Well, until. You see, Jor-El and Laura were hailed across the land as heroes, but feared by some. They brought so much knowledge to the world and gave the kingdom so much that they became close friends with the Waynes. Bruce attempts to scoff, stating that maybe they were more than friends, but Alfred continues, telling him that, well, to Martha, Jor-El was a god, and her husband gave all of himself to his kingdom. It was a single night, a single mistake, one that hurt the people they loved so much, a hurt that they might not have recovered from, but then he was born. Thomas couldn't father children, and the resentment that he harbored faded as the young child grew. Thomas loved you as much as any father has ever loved a son, Bruce. You healed all wounds. There was no anger left in them the day that they set out for Amazonia. That was until the Waynes were attacked by a green explosion, destroying Thomas and Martha's carriage. The one responsible realized the mistake, simply laughing, stating, "Martha? Whoops! Wrong carriage!" What they didn't realize was that Mount Kristoff, the volcano, also had a ring, one that whispered and twisted its wearer's mind, and the Green Man was born. That mountain created the cruel Joker, the man once known as Luthor. As Jor-El went after Luthor, Martha managed to live long enough to make a final decree, to give the kingdom to Jor-El and Laura if they would raise her son. But the issue is, in these times, the kingdom knew that Thomas could not sire a son. They knew that Bruce was actually a bastard. So, she asked them to protect Bruce until he was ready to rule, and the people were ready for him, and above all, to look after him, to love him in their place. Alfred tells him that he is the son of Thomas and Martha Wayne. It's just that he's also something more. So stop thinking that you're not worthy of them. They were hardly perfect people, none of them are. With Jor-El's murder, we are on the cusp of war, and as the only survivor of a war, I will do anything to avoid that again. So Bruce asks, "Is there a plan?" And Alfred says, "No, but I do have a king." Zala stands over the coffin of her father. She looks up as Kal walks into the room and asks her when she heard about his death. 2 days ago. I'm sorry I didn't come straight home. I've been searching for the Green Man, she tells him, and Kal pulls her into a hug. Justice will be done, my sister. I promise. Meanwhile, Harley Quinn is wandering through Hob Forest, and she is grabbed by a living vine that pulls her into the air. She swings back and forth as she looks at the witch coming through the trees. Don't do anything rash. I was sent by the queen. Ivy stares at her from her throne-like tree. I recognize no queen, she says in jest, stepping off of her throne and walking forward. Does Batman still want to put me in a cell? Ivy asks, and Harley thinks about it for a moment. I mean, probably. It's what he does, she finally says, and Ivy releases her, and the two walk through the forest. Harley explains that the king has been killed by an arrow shot from the forest, which Waller now wants to burn. but Harley suggests that the forest and Ivy instead act as the first line of defense for the kingdom. Ivy looks at her. I won't help the elves. I don't trust them. But I will always help you, Quinn. No danger will be allowed through the forest. Harley smiles and thanks her, but Ivy reaches out, taking her hand. In return, you will live here with me, she says with a smile, and Harley lies. This again? She pulls her hand away. My lady, I'm always happy to visit, but you have your world to protect and I have mine. Respect that. Ivy nods, promising to protect the kingdom. I would bury an army for you, Quinn. Wow, not many people can find the perfect balance of romance and horror. But the conversation is interrupted as Ivy senses someone flying over the forest. She pulls Harley into the trees, and the two see Diana flying over the treetops on her Pegasus. Ivy lashes out with her vines, stopping the flying horse, sending Wonder Woman to the ground below, and Diana lands on her feet, glaring at the approaching Ivy. Stand aside, Forest Witch, she growls, but Ivy refuses, and Diana lashes out, knocking down the tree, catching it and swinging it like a club at Ivy. But the witch uses her powers to lash vines around Diana and trap her. You will not be allowed to harm the forest any further, and you will not be allowed to pass through it, invader. Ivy shouts, and Diana pushes against her bonds, moving forward slowly until her hand wraps around Ivy's throat. You cannot hold me. I do not want violence, but I can crush your face if this attack continues. Finally, Harley steps forward, asking Diana why she has even come. Diana explains that she wishes to speak to Zala, but she doesn't believe in the violence that she is being accused of. And what am I being accused of? Zala asks as she and Cal float down out of the sky. Harley looks at them in surprise, asking why they have come. We have very good hearing and you are knocking down trees, Cal tells her with a smile. The fight ends and Ivy releases Diana, allowing her and Zala to leave the forest. The pair sit on a hill overlooking the kingdom, and Diana explains to Zala that she has been accused of killing King Pierce's son. What? Zala asks in shock. If I murdered a child, I'd think that I'd remember that. She continues, and Zala leans close to Diana, telling her that King Jefferson Pierce is making up these lies to gather allies against the elves. If war is coming, let's make sure we're on the same side of it. I mean, we can't let our families split us apart. The world needs us, Zala tells her. Elsewhere, Bruce has met Cal outside of the castle to show him the strange green rock that he and Alfred discovered. You believe the fallen star came from Krypton? Cal asks him as he takes the rock, which has been wrapped up for his own safety, but Cal doesn't understand how it affected Bruce. I'm sorry, Cal. I should have told you as soon as I learned. Jor-El told me moments before he died, and I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want you to think less of your father. He turns back to Cal to see his half-brother's reaction, but Cal rushes forward, stabbing Bruce in the stomach with the shard of kryptonite. Bruce is shocked, but Cal grabs him by the throat, flying him up into the air. This is our world now! Ours to rule. There will be no challengers, Cal says, leaning close to the shocked Bruce Wayne. He throws him to the ground, creating a massive crater, and with it done, he flies away. A short time later, two farmers are driving their wagon home, and John Kent sees the smoking crater and goes to investigate, shocked to find Batman has fallen to the earth. He's still breathing barely, John says to Martha as he checks the body. He needs our aid, she tells her husband. John isn't happy about this idea, but he moves to help Bruce. Believing that the rock stabbing his chest is poisoning him, he grabs a hold of that rock, pulling it free. Almost immediately, Bruce begins to stir. Let's get him to the palace, Martha suggests, but Bruce sits up sharply. No palace, he gasps. The old farmers help Bruce to his feet, and Martha suggests they take him back to the farm. You want to take him home? John gasps at her, and she nods. Yes, John. It's what we do with lost souls, she tells her husband, and he shakes his head, smiling. Your compassion will be the death of us one day, Martha Kent, he says with love. In the Kingdom of Storms, the princess is about to be crowned the queen, but John Constantine is still in mourning. It's Timothy Drake who goes to see the man, but John wants none of it. Do not pretend to care about me. I know what you are. I've known for quite some time. You're one of his Robins, Timothy Drake. He gets up to look out the window, informing Tim that he was placed in his service so that John could keep an eye on him. Tim comes up behind his master, questioning why John would allow him to bring news of the assassination to the elves, wondering if he doesn't even believe his own prophecy. I believed it. I just didn't want to be a part of fulfilling it. John explains to him, and Tim looks at him, promising to not tell Batman about John's true feelings about the king. You're a good man, John, Tim says, but John looks at a magical fire blazing in his hand. No, I'm not, he growls, the blast throwing Tim through the door as Princess Jennifer and her guards approach. Constantine stumbles out into the hallway, warning Jennifer that Tim is a spy. Before Tim can explain himself, the guards approach, but he manages to leap over their heads, disarming one and standing with a spear at the ready. I don't want to hurt anyone, he snaps, but the blast of lightning from Jennifer rips through him. She raises him into the air, but Tim is pleading to Constantine for help. John finally puts his hand on Jennifer's shoulder. Jennifer, hold, he says softly, not wishing to taint the day with the boy's death. She finally nods, dropping Tim to the ground. Go and never come back, Timothy Drake. Tell your queen that war is coming, and it's a war that we intend to win for my brother, my father, and our world, Jennifer says to the young boy. Later, Tim stands before the House of El, who have informed him that Bruce is missing and the others are searching for him. Queen Laura tells Tim that he may speak freely. Your Highness, I'm here to tell you the war with the Kingdom of Storms is coming. Jefferson Pierce has been killed by Zala Jor-El. The family begins to argue, but Cal points out that the Jeffersons are making lies to justify war against the elves. But it's Harley who looks at the princess. A lie witnessed by a ship full of people? She wonders, but Zala still maintains her innocence. Diana steps forward, warning that the Amazons will stand with the Kingdom of Storms. Queen Laura finally stands and motions to everyone to leave. I would like to consider this now, she says, but before Waller leaves, she leans close to her queen. I'll leave you with this. I do not believe the love between Diana and Zala can be broken, and if Hippolyta dies, Diana becomes the queen of the Amazons, Waller tells her. It's that night that Cal is floating down to Olsen, questioning if they found Batman. No, I'm sorry, Cal. No reports from the Robins or Alfred. Cal nods, and he looks away. Hopefully they'll find him before I return, he says softly, but before telling Olsen that he will try to stop the war, and he flies away. Meanwhile, John Constantine has decided to make a deal with the devil. He calls forth the demon Etrigan, but wishes to speak with the demon's mortal host. In a burst of fire, Ra's al Ghul appears before the magician. John leads Ra's into the crypts of the Kingdom of Storms, and he asks him to return King Pierce to the world of the living. But Ra's shakes his head. There is nothing that I can do for your king, Constantine. I can only repair what is broken, not what is missing. I can't repair a heart that isn't there. He then turns to the body of Jacob and explains that he can bring the young prince back. What will it cost me? John asks him. Ra's smiles. He tells him that he wants the children, that he knows John has hidden away the Titans, and he wants to know where they are. Do we have an agreement? Ra's asks as he holds out his hand. Meanwhile, over in Amazonia, Cal approaches the island of warrior women, but the sentries are warned and Artemis lets loose an arrow. Cal's eyes blaze as he burns it out of the sky. Cal lands among the warriors who quickly surround him. My name is Kal-El. I seek your queen, he tells them, and the warriors rush him, breaking their weapons upon his skin. He pushes them all away, his eyes burning. Stop this! I don't want to fight! The queen finally pushes through, flanked by Lois Lane. For someone who doesn't want to fight, you've done a lot of fighting, Lois calls out, and the queen looks to the prince, reminding him that no man may step foot on Amazonia. Cal looks down at his feet, revealing that he is still hovering over the ground. I haven't set foot on Amazonia, he tells her, Queen Hippolyta drawing her sword, pushing it through Cal's stomach. You sought me, Kal-El. You found me. Kal-El wakes up later in the dungeons, tied by a golden lasso, and Lois enters the chamber. Are you awake, spaceman? Sorry about the queen. Give an Amazon a magical sword, and every problem looks like it has to be stabbed. She explains to Cal that he can't lie with the lasso around him and tells him that she was once Zala's friend and that she long defended his family against the ideas of Constantine's prophecy. But it's fair to say that your sister murdered a child and a king, and that has made the elves a little bit harder to defend. Cal tries to explain to her that everything is a lie, that his sister would never harm a child. Lois stands telling him that she feels like invisible strings are controlling everyone. But she stands telling him that it no longer matters, they've run out of time. I'm sorry, but the Amazon army is already sailing for the lands of El. The war is about to begin. The elves fly forward, their eyes blazing as they burn through everything in their path. Batman rushes forward, his sword drawn as he tries to stop them, but the Queen lashes out, knocking him to the ground. This is our world now, bastard. Ours to rule. She snarls. Bruce looks to Cal. Please, brother, he gasps. But the families turn their burning eyes upon Bruce, and he bursts into flames. He sits up sharply as the nightmare ends, gasping as sweat drips from his body. Are you all right? A voice calls out, and Bruce whirls around to see a green dog standing in the room. Demons! He shouts, and the dog smiles. I think you might be seeing things that aren't there, the dog says, and John and Martha come into the room, with Martha checking his forehead. It's all right, Prince Wayne. You're safe, John tells him. And the dog is joined by a witch. He is not safe. There is something inside of him, something that is poisoning him. He is dying, Raven tells them. Meanwhile, over at the Kingdom of Storms, Roz brings Prince Jacob to Constantine. Having been raised from the dead, Jacob demands to see his sisters. But Roz shakes his head, explaining that the prince can't be seen by the court. Too many have seen your body. You would be burned. Trust me in this. I speak from experience. Roz tells them, but John promises Jacob that they will figure things out and bring down the elves as vengeance for his father. He finally turns back to Roz. What do you want me to do with the children? He asks, and Roz informs him that there are greater threats than the wars of the kingdoms. You need not concern yourself with the children, Constantine. You made a deal. The Titans will be mine now, Roz says as he turns to leave. Meanwhile, back over at the Kent farm, Raven has worked her magic, pulling the sliver of kryptonite that was poisoning Bruce out of his body. He finally awakens to find the Titans standing over him, informing him that they voted on whether they should just let him die. I voted to not let you die, the green dog says as it comes back through the door. Gar shifts before his eyes, becoming a green human once again. Hi, I'm Beast Boy, he says with a smile and extends his hand. Do not shake his hand. His hands are covered in the blood of our kind, Raven tells her friend. Bruce defends himself, explaining that he has never killed, but the Titans are aware that he captures their kind and imprisons them. You make me sick, Raven says before the group leaves the room. Martha steps forward. Well, that could have gone better, Prince Wayne. But you wouldn't be the first to attack others while denying the same truth about yourself, she says, and Bruce is shocked that the Kents have figured out his secret. With John explaining that when he fell out of the sky and survived was when they really figured it all out. So Bruce questions why they keep the Titans in their home. To protect them from people like you, Martha tells him. But they are interrupted by Starfire shouting from the next room. The trio rush out to find that she has Richard Grayson by the foot and is holding him in the air. I found this boy sneaking around outside, Starfire snaps. Bruce steps forward after she has put Richard down and questions why he has come. All of the Robins have been searching for you. I found a crater with a piece of your armor in it, and then wagon tracks led me here. Have you been trapped by these demons? Richard asks, but Bruce shakes his head. They're not demons, Bruce finally admits, turning back to the other Titans and apologizing, especially to Raven, who saved his life. Bruce turns his gaze and his powers to allow him to see through the wall. What is it? John asks. Someone you don't want outside of your door. The demon's head, Bruce says before turning to pull on his armor and weapons. But outside, Roz stands with his daughter. We want the Titans. Send them out and no one will die, he shouts, but Bruce pulls on his gear. Stay inside, all of you. Grayson will protect you. Victor steps forward, offering to fight, but Bruce shakes his head, turning to see John and Martha arming themselves. We weren't always farmers, son. We once fought in your parents' army, John says as he hefts an axe. Bruce nods and the trio step outside to face Ra's al Ghul. These are El lands. Shadow of Shades does not have permission to be here, Batman calls, but Raz shakes his head. The children are ours. A bargain has been struck. And Bruce glares at him. No bargain has been struck with me, Roz. He growls, looking back at Martha. Their force is hiding in the field. All are failed abominations in front of the Lazarus River. They are dead already. Do not hold back. The undead rush towards the trio, with Roz transforming once again into the demon Etrigan. As Martha and John fight the dead, Batman is roasted by Etrigan's fiery breath, but the smoke clears to reveal that Batman is unharmed. What? You are not what you pretend to be, the demon says as Batman draws his blade, rushing forward. No, foul demon, I am not. I am a monster like you, and I will not allow you. He shouts, but his words are cut off as Etrigan hits him, launching him through the farmhouse. He looks up at the Titans that stand around him. They're on the floor, Starfire notes, and Batman nods. Yeah, I noticed. The Titans once more offer to help, and Beast Boy suddenly shifts, becoming a massive dragon. Let's wreak some havoc, he says with a smile, and the Titans rush outside, leaping into the combat with the assassins. Etrigan, we'll try this again, Hellspawn. Batman shouts, now flanked by his new friends. His eyes blaze, and he hits Etrigan with a blast of heat vision, launching the demon across the field. He turns his blazing eyes upon Talia, ordering her to take her father and leave. She finally relents. We'll leave, but there is more at stake here than you can possibly fathom. And you can't watch over the children, Prince Wayne, not while you're fighting a war, she tells him. After the fight, Batman removes his helmet, telling Richard that he can't return. I'm sorry, Grayson. I do not belong to the Elves. That has been made very clear. Bruce tells his young charge, but Grayson shakes his head, asking Batman to not turn his back on his people. You are the Prince of the Kingdom. As far as many are concerned, you're the rightful king. John steps forward, telling him of the first child that he saved, a boy who was from the land and the sea, who also felt that he didn't belong. But with enough humility and empathy, Arthur has become a great king, Martha says with a smile. So John steps forward, telling Bruce that he isn't a monster. You have great power, and if that power can stop a war, you know where you need to be. The armies have now begun to gather. The Amazons joining the army of storms. Far above them, the Green Man watches and cackles. It is time! Time for the kings and the queens to fall! It is time for this age to die! The Ring says, and the Green Man smiles. Finally! He cackles. Meanwhile, in the dungeons of the Elves, the supposed Banshee is leaning close to the bars. Hold still, Oliver tells her, flicking a stone across the dungeon, which breaks the lock on the mask that muffles her. She smiles at him. My thanks, stranger, Dinah tells him. He introduces himself, and she asks him how he found himself in the dungeon. I tried to save the world. I slew the God King, he tells her as he sits against the bars, looking at her. What are you in for? They think I'm a banshee. She explains that she has the ability to allow her to destroy things with her voice. Can you break these walls? He asks her, and she nods, explaining that she can't control it, and it might bring the whole castle down and kill them all. Oliver smiles. Sounds like you need help with your aim. I may be able to help you there. Back over in Hob Forest, Amanda Waller and Harley Quinn stand ready as the armies of Storms and Amazons approach. Hiya! Harley calls, waving her hand. She steps forward, attempting to speak to the sanity of the queens, telling them that no one has to die in the name of war. So what do you want? How do we ensure that all of these people can make it home? Harley asks, but the queens only want the elves. And when Waller refuses, she turns away. My army will see you on the other side of the forest, she growls. But Constantine refuses to let them leave. He rushes forward, hellfire in his hands, and he stops as he realizes that something isn't right. The forest is alive! He shouts as the trees begin to press in, vines lashing out at the armies of Storms and Amazons. Harley looks at Ivy. I said I'd bury an army for you, Ivy says with a smile, and Harley nods. There are two armies, she points out, leaning down, kissing Ivy before galloping away with Waller. But the Green Man arrives from above, slamming into Ivy, driving her into the ground. With that, the forest ends its assault and the armies are able to continue forward. Keep your armies marching, the Green Man tells John. As the armies finally step out of Hob Forest, Amanda Waller stands with her archers on the wall. Archers! Once they're in range, release on my command. Deadshot glances at her. They're already in range, Waller. She glares at him. Wait for my command. Zala and Diana then fly past them. Hold your fire, Diana shouts, and the pair land before the armies march forward. Turn your armies around. It's not too late, Zala pleads, and Diana stands beside her love, refusing to move at her mother's command. Meanwhile, from his secret cart, John Constantine watches as Jacob stands beside him. What did you say to Zala before she killed you? John asks the resurrected prince. I said I'd make it rain in her lungs, Jacob hisses. He holds out his hand, and outside Zala suddenly collapses to the ground, spitting up water as she begins to drown. But Jacob begins to falter. John, I don't know if I can. I've seen beyond. I don't want to send anyone else to their death. Diana reaches for Zala, turning back to her mother's army. Who is doing this? Stop it! She's dying! She shouts out, and Hippolyta steps forward, preparing to finish the young princess. But the army is scattered as Laura Jor-El stands amongst them. Hippolyta looks at the queen. Laura, don't do anything foolish. If you love your people, surrender. We have your son already. And if I surrender, what then? The Amazon queen promises that no one will be harmed and that they will end this war without anyone dying. She holds out her hand. I give you my word. Laura smiles, taking the hand. Where's the fun in that? Her eyes blaze and she cuts Hippolyta in half. Diana looks up in shock. Mother! She screams out. Trapped within the dungeons of Amazonia, Kal-El bows his head, but a voice barely below a whisper reaches his ear. Prince Kal-El, I know you can hear me, Cassandra says, stepping forward, putting a finger to her lips before freeing Kal-El. You need to get us out of here quickly. In a blur of motion, the two appear on the beach. Cassandra explains that she is one of Bruce Wayne's Robins, and Kal needs to return to his kingdom quickly. She offers him the lasso of truth and asks for one favor. Stop this war, Prince Kal-El. Bring the power of truth with you, she says, and Kal thanks her, leaping into the air, aiming for home. Outside of Castle El, the warring kingdoms look in shock as Laura stands over the murdered Hippolyta. Anissa and Diana move to attack the queen, but Laura quickly leaps into the air and flies away. Kal sees her approaching and flies to meet his mother, asking what is going on, but her response is to backhand him, sending him careening into the battlefield below. He struggles to his feet to find the grieving Diana standing before him. Diana, I don't know what's happening here. Please listen to me, he begs of her, but she steps forward, anger filling her mourning eyes. Amazons, attack! She bellows, hitting Kal hard enough to throw him across the battlefield. Over at the edge, Waller shouts for her army to charge. The battle is finally met. Overhead, the Green Man, the man manipulating everything, cheers with joy, launching himself downward. He listens to the words coming out of his magic ring, and he burns all of the armies with green fire. Anissa looks up in surprise at her former ally, shouting in anger. Green Man! She bellows as she calls lightning down from the sky. The armies continue to fight until there's suddenly a burst of fire from the sky, everyone looking up in shock as Batman flies in riding a green, fire-breathing dragon. Stop this madness! He yells, leaping off his dragon, landing at Kal's back, his sword drawn instantly, pointing at the prince's face. You tried to kill me, brother! But Kal is confused. What? Brother? What are you even talking about? I didn't try to kill you! Superman asks. In the battle, John Constantine has sat down. He sees all going on around him and is confused. None of this makes sense. So Lois rushes over to him. Constantine, look around! Nothing is making sense. The Green Man is turning the El Princes at odds. You have manipulated others for years. Surely you recognize when it's happening to you. John nods, rubbing his head, admitting that things seem to have gotten away from him. Inside of the castle, the queen has entered the dungeon and she has begun to use her heat vision to murder the super-powered prisoners. Oliver looks up as his cellmates burn, turning to Dinah and telling her that the time for caution has passed. Aim that way! He shouts, pointing to the wall. Dinah uses her banshee scream to take out the walls and their chains, allowing them both to rush into the nearby armory. The two arm themselves, and Dinah takes out another, the one-armed archer stopping in shock. Oh great, it's a whole damn war! He sighs as he sees the massive battle below them. They turn quickly as the queen approaches, her eyes burning with murderous intent. "You have too much power to live!" she shouts, but suddenly something flies out of the sky, slamming into her, knocking her into the battle below. Queen Laura looks up in surprise as her attacker stands over her, the battle suddenly stopping as everyone looks up in shock as Queen Laura stands over the fallen Queen Laura. "What are you?" the true queen asks the terrible clone. It is Alfred who suddenly rushes forward. "Fire! Use fire!" he shouts, and Oliver rushes forward, dipping his crossbow bolt into the nearby flame. He fires the flaming bolt at the fallen queen, striking her in the chest. She screams in pain as her form begins to shift and mold, revealing the White Martian. The creature turns, fleeing away, with Cal and Zala giving chase. But before they can stop it, the monster disappears. Below them, Alfred has begun to shake his head, turning to Bruce. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know that they were here." And Bruce looks at him. "Alfred, what are you talking about?" Bruce demands, and Alfred's form suddenly begins to shift, revealing the green Martian beneath. "You know I am the last survivor of a war, Bruce. That war was not on this world." Diana steps forward with her sword drawn, demanding answers from the green Martian Alfred. "I didn't know, I promise." Alfred tries to tell her, but Bruce steps in the way of the Amazon's weapon. "Hold, please," he tells her, and Diana orders him to move. Above their heads, the green dragon lowering its massive jaw. "Hey, angry Amazon lady, the Batman asked you to hold," Garth growls. Kal-El steps forward at the lasso of truth, which Diana is shocked he possesses. He uses it on Alfred, demanding to know his true motives. He explains that he is loyal to the House of El and loves Bruce as if he was his own son. Constantine steps around the corner. "It's pretty definitive. I suggest we all take a breath, reassess the situation," he says, with Diana turning on him angrily. "You suggest, Constantine? Look where your suggestions have led us!" she shouts. Around them, the battlefield smokes and bodies of the fallen are scattered. Anissa steps forward, agreeing that they should pause. But she is shocked when her fallen brother, now brought back from the dead, steps up from Constantine's wagon. "What have you done?" she gasps in shock and anger as she turns to John Constantine. Queen Laura L steps through the battlefield, ordering her forces to stand down. She says that they will allow the Amazons and the Storm armies to gather their dead and take shelter within the Castle L. Waller is shocked, beginning to protest, but Laura shakes her head. "They will be welcomed, General Waller. They will be fed, and they will be sheltered. And then I invite you to discuss the true enemies in our midst," Laura says as she turns back to the opposing queens. Later, the queen has gathered in the throne room and begun to question Alfred. But they are interrupted as Harley Quinn opens the doors for Lady Ivy, who insists that if the planet is in peril, then she should have an avatar at this meeting. The queens do not protest as Lady Ivy creates a throne of vines for herself. "Tell us everything we need to know," they say to Alfred. So Alfred explains that his real name is Jean Jans, and he comes from the planet of Mars. Once it was a thriving utopia where the white and green Martians lived in relative peace. But Protex came and declared that the white Martians were superior to the green Martians, and a civil war broke out. The green Martians couldn't fight physically because of the more brutish white Martians, so they devised more powerful weapons that spread fire across the surface of the planet. It covered the planet of Mars in red ash, and both sides were almost wiped out. Jean remained the sole green Martian, having lost his family in the war. He decided to leave the barren rock that his planet had become, and he came to Earth. The Waynes knew what I was. The king and the queen asked me to keep it a secret, Jean says as he finishes his story, explaining that Protex has now come to Earth with the remaining white Martians to rule and enslave mankind. Laura nods her head, explaining that now they know. They need to ally their kingdoms as never before and fight against the new threat. Diana agrees. "I know who is responsible for our pain. I know who has earned my fury. I will find Protex, wherever he is," she vows. But meanwhile, over in the forest, the Green Man sits atop a tree, speaking to his magic ring, asking what he is to do next, but the ring tells him that his time is over. And Lex looks at it in confusion. "I don't understand," He whispers, "We can't allow so much power to be held by a man who believes inanimate objects are speaking to him," the ring says. And that's when Protex appears, ripping the green man's arm off of his body and dropping him into the forest. "You were a tool for a time of subterfuge, Luther. That time has passed," Protex declares as the other white Martians suddenly appear behind him. The L Kingdom. Inside the castle, Harley steps into a room finding Constantine having a drink alongside Lady Lois. "Wow, Constantine, did you really screw up?" she says as John is finishing the drink that he's having. "The prophecy was right, Quinn. It was only the interpretation that failed us," he points out, and Lois shakes her head, pouring another drink. "We're all playing. We failed our monarchs. We failed our kingdoms. But the shapeshifters have not reckoned that the three of us would be sitting in a room together." The others smile, pouring their drinks. "Let us plan how we're going to F them up," John says with a nod. Elsewhere in the castle, Kal-El and Bruce stand at a balcony, with Bruce finally telling Cal the truth about their father. Cal steps forward, hugging the man he now knows to be his brother. "I will come to terms with the full ramifications of this in time, but I've always thought of you as a frustrating, know-it-all brother. I could not be happier that it's true," Cal says with a smile. The discussion turns to the shapeshifters, curious how they were able to stab Bruce if he is half Kryptonian, and Bruce explains that he and Alfred found a strange falling rock. "We found a green crystal at the site. It saps my strength, reduces us Kryptonians to mere mortals. It can kill us, and Cal, an entire meteor of it, fell out of the sky." Deep within the lair of the white Martians, the creatures are still breaking pieces of the green crystals off of the meteor, shaping them into blades. Their leader, Protex, stepping forward, admiring the work. "Yes, with this we can kill the Kryptonians," Protex proclaims as he raises one of the glowing blades, and a warrior steps forward, warning Protex of the arrival of a green Martian. "Jean-Jeans, he is here, and he will tell them our secrets, our weaknesses. He must be silenced," Protex muses. Shortly, the white Martians shift through the stone walls of Castle L, finding Jean alone in the dungeons. "Your little friends have imprisoned you. I can't believe what you chose to become in this world," Protex says. He stands before his old enemy, proclaiming that the white Martians have become legends in this world, taking the shape of many monsters and phantoms. He raises his green ring, preparing to silence the green Martian forever since he is now powerless, and a green tendril snakes out, beginning to strangle Jean. "I'm not entirely powerless. I can still speak, and I can still think, and my thoughts have not been contained in my own mind. They have reached another." The dungeon wall suddenly explodes inward as Kal-El bursts through, Bruce quickly following with a sword in hand, and the two stare at Protex as the Martian shifts into a great monster. But they hit him with their heat vision, and he escapes, screaming in pain. "Are you all right?" Bruce asks as he rushes to Jean's side, and the green Martian nods, explaining that the kingdom needs to protect itself. So defenses are put into place, great fires are lit on every wall, and all the soldiers travel with torches in hand. Diana and Zala dig up a great moat and fill it with a burning pitch to defend the castle. Jean and Bruce oversee it all, and as they watch, Jean apologizes for deceiving Bruce for all of these years. Bruce holds up the lasso of truth and asks Jean to read his mind. Jean is stunned by what he senses. "Yes, you kept something from me and it hurt me, but I understand why. You thought I'd see you as I saw many others. As a monster, Alfred," Bruce says as he puts his hand on the man's shoulder. "From the moment my parents died, you have stood behind me. I would not know who I am without you. I may not have known who you were, but I know you. I am grateful, and I love you." He tells Alfred that he has been wrong about many things and must begin to set them right. Alongside Cal, he descends into the castle dungeons, freeing the powered beings that he has locked away inside of there. "Just the people who deserve to be released! Violent robbers and murderers will stay imprisoned," Quinn says as she pops around his shoulder. But all is not well in the kingdom. Amanda Waller, leader of the L's armies, does not agree with siding with the other kingdoms. She points out that the people have still died by their hands. But Laura tells her that an alliance is their best course at this time. Waller finally bows her head. "As you wish, Your Majesty," she says before turning and walking from the room. Laura then takes her children to the burial site of their crashed ship, where she pulls a crystal from the computer. "Can it harm us?" Cal asks her, and Laura shakes her head. The crystal simply holds plans, she explains, so the royal family goes beneath the castle where they forge an object that will aid them in the coming battle. "Is it a weapon?" Zala asks, but Laura explains that it is a doorway to an unbreakable prison. She holds up the Phantom Zone projector. "With this, we can send them all into the Phantom Zone, a prison." In the lair of the White Martians, Protex's forces have finished their weapons, but they stop as Amanda Waller and Deadshot ride in. Waller draws her sword, stepping forward. "You have endangered my people," she growls, and one of the warriors moves forward to grab her. "Be careful, your entire species is almost extinct. You shouldn't throw your life away by laying a hand on me." The warrior grabs her and he suddenly screams as she bursts into flames. She watches coldly as he dies. "Stop this!" Protex demands, but Waller shakes her head. "Impossible. The spell of protection has been triggered. I made a deal with the devil. Hellfire cannot be extinguished." She stalks forward, staring up at the face of Protex. "You and I had an agreement and a plan, Protex. I will create another opening for you and we will succeed, but only if you follow my instructions from now on." Amanda Waller looks over the pit of glowing stones at her new ally, the White Martian known as Protex, as they devise their battle plan for tomorrow. "The castle is surrounded by flames," the Martian reminds her, but Waller waves off the comment, noting that her secret squad will make sure that the fires have been put out before dawn. "You do not touch any of the people or soldiers in my kingdom, Protex. Do you understand?" She reminds him, and Protex nods his agreement. Meanwhile, over in the Castle L, the three advisors, Harley Quinn, John Constantine, and Lady Lois, have gone before the rulers of the three kingdoms, offering their plan on how to stop the Martians once and for all. It will require deception, and there is an element of risk with releasing an uncontrollable force that really should not be released. But we believe that we can nullify the aliens. Their ultimate fate will rest with you, Lady Lois says as they finish. "Whose idea was this?" Bruce says, glancing at Constantine with disdain, but Lois explains that the plan was devised by all three of them. "And you had the greatest mind in the world locked in your dungeon, so we also asked for his counsel," motioning to Bobo the chimp, the great detective chimp nodding his head, explaining that while the plan has many risks, it also has the greatest chance of success. "You advisors are advising well," he says, and Queen Laura nods, dismissing the council, wishing the queens to discuss the issue. As everyone walks out, Bobo turns to John, doffing his hat. "You are being blamed for much of what has transpired. I hope that you will take credit if it succeeds." John smiles. "Of course, and if it all goes arse up, I'll tell him it was the monkey's idea." Time passes, and just before dawn, there is a great snowstorm. Deadshot and Captain Cold stand on the castle walls, with Cold using his magical wand to blow a powerful wind chill down on the armies of the Storm Kingdom and the Amazons, putting out the fires that are protecting them from the Martians. The Amazons fight to keep their fires lit, but a green fog begins to roll towards them as General Philippus steps forward with her sword drawn. "Be ready!" she shouts to her warriors, but Dinah steps through the gathering of soldiers and she takes one big, deep breath, her scream piercing through the fog, throwing it back. The assault forces the White Martians to take on their true forms, snarling creatures who become solid again and rush at the Amazons, and thus our fight begins. General Philippus rushes forward, swinging her blade at Protex, but the Martian hardens his skin and the blade shatters. He smiles as he grabs her by the throat, lifting her into the air, the green mace appearing in his hand, created by the magical ring on his finger. "Look in my face! Let it be the last thing that you see, human," he growls as a blur moves through the air and Kal-El slams into the side of the Martian, throwing him away. Protex looks up, seeing the gathering of powerful warriors. Diana, Cal, Zala, and Bruce stand ready. "Leave these people alone," It's us that you want, Cal shouts, and Protex snarls his agreement. But the heroes are refusing to fight where others can get hurt, and they fly away. They're fleeing! We hunt! Protex growls as the Martians draw their kryptonite blades and fly after the heroes. But the heroes finally arrive at Mount Kristoff, the place where the elves revealed themselves for the first time. And they wait. As the white Martians begin to circle them, Diana looks around angrily. Before we begin, tell me, which of you killed my mother? One of the Martians raises his hand, smiling. It was I who split your mother in twain so easily. Before Diana can respond, the mountain begins to rumble, and Protex looks around in confusion as Bruce smiles. That's an earthquake. He explains as in the distance, the Queens of the Storm use their powers to upset the balance of the Earth, activating the volcano that is Mount Kristoff once again. The volcano erupts, spewing fire and lava everywhere, the flames raining down on the white Martians, weakening them. But the heroes aren't done. Zala grabs a hold of the barrel of pitch that they had hidden away, tossing it down on the powerful heroes, lighting them on fire. The heroes leap into battle, the flames taking the strength and powers away from their enemies. And Bruce pushes through the destruction. Protex! He bellows as he lunges at the white Martian leader. Alfred sends his regards, he says as he punches the monster hard, shattering his teeth. Nearby, the Martian known as Graz, the murderer of Queen Hippolyta, cowers in fear as Diana is standing over him, her sword at the ready. Graz, your name will live on in Amazon history for any who would harm a queen. You will be a cautionary tale, she says as she swings her blade, slicing Graz's head in half. As the battle comes to its conclusion, Queen Laura arrives, not wishing any more blood to be spilt in the battle, and she holds up the mighty device that she and her children created. It begins to glow and suck the Martians inside of it. Protex, for your crimes against the kingdom in this world, you and your followers are banished, she says as the Kryptonian magic swirls, pulling the Martians into the Phantom Zone. Thus, the great battle has ended. But that would not be the last of the losses for the day. At the castle, Alfred looks up as the doors to the Great Hall open. General Waller and Deadshot walk in. General Waller, you have missed so much. Where have you been? Alfred asks her, but Waller dismisses him, explaining that she was outside with the troops. Alfred stops her, looking at Deadshot. Whatever magical guards you have access to have hidden your thoughts well, Waller, but you should have extended that defense to your underling. Alfred looks at her, having seen everything that she did with Protex. He reaches out a hand for her arm. You will be taken to the dungeon, General. But Alfred then looks in shock as his hand bursts into flames. You should not have laid your hand on me, Green Man, she says with a smile. In the distance, Bruce can feel Alfred's pain and fear, and he leaps into the air, rocketing towards the castle. The first time the bat flew. He arrives at the castle as Alfred bursts into flames. Bruce, my boy. Alfred manages to gasp before turning to ashes before Bruce's eyes. He looks as Waller draws his sword, whirling on Deadshot. You! Foul traitor! She bellows as she rushes forward, stabbing Deadshot through the chest and then leaning down to Bruce, apologizing for not seeing Deadshot's deception before he was able to kill Alfred. I'm sorry, my prince, but it is over now, she says to him quietly. And thus the tale ends. The kingdoms have come together, knowing that there are still threats out there. The great kingdoms of the oceans, the sky realms, the frozen isles. Cal found his brother Bruce, questioning why he would turn down the right to sit upon the throne and rule, but Bruce shakes his head, looking out the window, looking on the kingdom of his family, and he explains that he wishes to find out who he truly is, to explore the world, to go where no one has heard of the bastard Bat Prince, he says, and Cal smiles, nodding. I understand, but know this. When you do realize you're worthy to lead, brother, I will follow the Bat King, Cal says as he takes his brother's hand in a shake of honor. The three kingdoms have come together, signing a declaration of unity, creating the League of Kingdoms, and the world will need them. Thank you for watching today's episode of Comicstorian Full Story. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought about this and who your favorite superhero is. And don't forget, you can check out the Comicstorian main channel to get daily videos. You can join us over at Comicstorian Movies, aka Absolutely, the podcast channel, to get our opinions on everything going on in the world of superhero movies, comic books, and video games. Or you can join us over at Comicstorian, where we talk about manga. And don't forget to click the link down below to support us further. This hot sauce is a hot sauce that we have created. Hatchin' Jalapeno is a flavor that we created, which involves infusing whiskey into a hot sauce. No, it's not alcoholic, and yes, it is FDA approved. Anyway, once again, thank you so much for watching today's video. I'll see you next time, right here.